talk about the death of Quincy Jones, 91 years old, perhaps the greatest music producer to ever live, spanning from the 1950s up until who knows, like like at least like the 2000s or whatever. He's probably still active in some form, but throughout, taking it from jazz to working in orchestral music to working in television, film scores, like some of like the biggest movies and biggest artists, like all like kind of like look to this guy as like a Jedi, a Yoda, like a guy that was just a genius and broke so many color barriers for himself, like in the music business. Frank Sinatra was riding with him. Michael Jackson was riding with him. Like, I was just thinking about it. I was like, bro, all the stuff that this guy did in his life, like, you could not make a movie about this because you'd be like, this is too unrealistic. Like,
Yeah.
and
And also he's at that sweet spot of like the music industry where like you get so big where like you run things that like people in his like contemporary positions now never had that power, even while they were powerful as fuck. Like the days of a music producer like having sway in a real way, like that was a thing that was that ended during our lifetimes. He actually, and he's one of those people that had more power than people that like, we were like, hey man, yeah, we shut down a whole, like we're giving them imprints, we're letting them do whatever they want because they're the geniuses. Like that's kind of crazy. And like he's one of the, like in the Rolling Stone era, I'm sure you heard about this. There was recently a former Rolling Stone editor that was writing about musicians or whatever else. And people asked, like, how come you don't have any black musicians as your subjects in this particular book you're writing? And he pointed out, he said some shit about, in his opinion, his bullshit opinion, that black people can't articulate their artistry in the ways that their white counterparts can, which has always been bullshit.
mm-hmm.
And
what do they say? They're like playing it off feeling and stuff like that. They try to,
trying to do like everyone's James Brown talking about like, yo, look, this, you see that, you see this trumpet in your hand, that's a drum. Like, no, get the fuck out of here. Anyway, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that with Quincy Jones. Absolutely cannot. Right. So like, he was one of those guys. So so when we talk about impact and legacy, like he's up there. Like, I mean, honestly, this isn't a podcast for that. There will be, pop culture podcasts to go through some of the stuff. I'm really interested to see what if there's a Spencer Hall and Bomani segment or podcast coming up on that, because like I thought the one he had that those two did together on Stevie Wonder was really enlightening.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, forget the whole Motown part, talk about like him going through UCLA, going through his music deals and everything. All that. I thought it was interesting because it's stuff I've never picked up, because like I've never found with certain artists it's not a definitive biography. You have to pick up biographies. I ain't got time for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of hard. The same thing with Prince. Like there's not a quintessential biography or the go-to for. There's a few of them, like, and that's hard. It's not like how it is with athletes, where it's like
what I find with Prince is like you have to get people that tell the stories inside of like these long ass books. They be like studio sessions with Prince from 1978 to 91, and you just read that shit like of how he operated, like because they don't tell the stories like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or tell their own stories like that. But luckily,
and to be right, frank, I don't feel like black artists have granted writers the kind of access that like rock bands did in the 60s, 70s when they're all high and just trashing hotel rooms.
I was going to say,
there's something to that.
With Quincy Jones, luckily he was somebody that would not hold back if you actually got him to sit down.
You sit him down and you give him a nice meal and you talk to him a little bit.
Give him a little reefer.
He ain't got no problem giving anything unsolicited.
Unloading the clip.
Yes. He don't even think it's unloading the clip. He's like, oh yeah.
By the way,
all them dudes were fucking each other. All of them. Excuse me? You like Brazilian music? Yeah, man, everyone do that. You like Brazilian music? shit was ridiculous.
Yo, the you like Brazilian music? I'm gonna keep that shit with me for the rest of my life.
That was the funniest fucking thing. Like, cause it was like I didn't know he was still of mind in that way, given his age, to be able to give that kind of information out. And he was like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. I'll say that. Yeah. Like, my favorite part was like because everyone says this because like it's a well known thing to like, for as legendary as the Beatles were, Ringo was a shitty drummer. Like, even on records, it's like a very simplistic drummer. But like for Quincy Jones to be like, nah, he wasn't just a simplistic drummer. He was a shitty session drummer. We would have he would go out there and fuck up and couldn't keep time of nothing. And we would have people come. We have another session drummer come in behind him after he leaves and give him and just replay his shit because he would fuck up so bad. That shit was hilarious, bro. Yeah. And it was one interview, and there were like 40 tidbits like that in this one interview. All of them were clipped up on Twitter that day.
Vulture.
It was incredible.
There's a Vulture interview, I think in like either like 2018 or something like that. Like it literally stopped everyone in their tracks. Like, please seek it out if you haven't. It's like he's gonna tell you just about things and the way life was. There's a great Netflix documentary about him that I watched that he participated in a couple years ago. It pretty much wrapped up, his career between him and the Black Godfather. They both died now. What the fuck was his name? Clarence Avant. Like, between Clarence Avant and Quincy Jones, that is the Black Hollywood industry in secret society right there. Like, everything rolled up to Clarence Avant and Quincy Jones. He was putting people on, like, when you blow up, you got to go see Quincy Jones. Why? Because he's going to tell you the temperature out here or out there, at least.
Yeah.
In Hollywood world. And so many people sampled like so many songs of his. Too much to really count, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about his work with Michael Jackson, which I think is that's a crown jewel, I would say, of his stuff. He did work with Frank Sinatra as well, but most stuff people are gonna hear that may have listened to this podcast. Like, we're talking about Off the Wall, we're talking about Thriller, we're talking about Bad, and then like you can look at Michael Jackson's career as a kid,
his peak,
with the Motown factory, right? Great shit. Like, and all the musicians they played with. But like, when they would put those Michael Jackson single records out, they never really took off like that. And then, like, when the Jacksons got off Motown, they still were making good stuff, but they were older, they were older teen act, right? But when it was time for Michael to do his shit, he met Quincy Jones on the set of The Wiz. Because why? Quincy Jones had been scoring movies for like 15 years by that point. So Diana Ross introduces Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson, and literally the rest is history. Like, the disco era, like, Quincy Jones pretty much zips that up and basically was like, I'm going to do it better than anybody else did it, and then we're going to leave it here or whatever. And this is how you do it with this shining star. And I'm going, like, my music is in my instrumentation, and all the music that he had been doing his whole life led him up to being 50 years old around that time and creating the best shit of his life or whatever. And that's Off the Wall. That's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. That's Working Day and Night. That's all that stuff that's like, oh my God, that's Rock With You. That's just like these timeless songs that you throw on right now, and it's like immaculately produced. And they were producing the old way, James, the real way. They had instruments in their schools, James. They learned, how to play instruments back then. This is a luxury we did not have.
Their asses were still forced to go to church, pick up that piano, and pick up them drums.
Analog, yes.
Yeah.
Learning new technology in real time, working with Herbie Hancock, different shit like that. Then, of course, Thriller. What do you say?
We came up. We may have had the greatest post disco album of all time, and we followed up years later with Thriller, which is like might have the most monstrous A side of an album I've ever heard. Like, for those that are, because we're still at that age where we actually know what an A-side is. For those that are younger than us, albums used to come out on vinyl disc, right? 45s, right? And there was a side where like the first half of the album would play called the A side, and the back half was the B side. And so like, yeah, like when you look up Thriller and you see, let's go through that Thriller discography. It starts with "Wanna Be Starting Something." I know that off the top of my head. Then you get to, I believe the Ace. Hold on, here we go. Track list. Okay, I'm sorry, it's trying to show me a legacy of the thing. I just want to see the track list. Okay, here we go. Track listing. Okay, so yeah, here we go. Side A, "Want to Be Starting Something." "Baby Be Mine" by Rod Temperton, who another all-time great one, but not Quincy Jones. "The Girl Is Mine," Thriller. Yeah, that's tough, man. And then like somehow I'm sorry, I'm in side B. Side B is "Beat It," Billie Jean, "Human Nature," "Pretty Young Thing," and then "The Lady of My Life." All produced except for "Lady of My Life" by Quincy Jones. Man, if you land one "Beat It," if you land one Billie Jean, if you land one "Pretty Young Thing" in a lifetime, you can go out on top. He landed 3 of those on one side of an album.
Yeah, like, like it's phenomenal. Like you guys all know the songs. Like when we say the songs, you hear them.
Yeah, like I personally think the 2 best Michael Jackson songs of all time are "Billie Jean" and "Beat It." They're both on the same side of the album. Forget he played them both on the album. He put them on the same side. That's absurd. Like, and then you have the avant-garde stuff. I'm sorry, I can't say that word. Avant-garde stuff that he did, like the instrumental album that he came out with. That, like, for example, is a sample for "Dead Presidents" being used 1,000,000 times. Like, he has a legacy. Like,
he's one of those
He's one of those elemental forces of hip hop.
Jones right there.
Sorry?
That Tupac, "How Do You Want It?" That's Quincy Jones right there.
Yep. He's one of those elemental forces of hip hop. Like, I'm not saying he's James Brown, but below the next notch below that, he's in that pantheon of most sampled like artists, producers ever, musicians ever. He's there. Is James Brown at number 1 by a mile, and then everything after that, like next person you start looking at is people like Quincy Jones.
Then as the technology changes, like the keyboards start coming in, and Bad comes out. I think they were kind of chasing the Minneapolis sound, and they kind of did it in their own way. Still on that album, and that massive fucking album. Like, think about like "The Way You Make Me Feel," and then see like Quincy Jones crossed like cultures with his music. Like when you drop that out somewhere, right, mixed crowd or whatever, right, like everybody loses their mind with that boom, 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 boom. Like, because it's like he's taking elements of swing music, like big beat, like all this stuff, but like repackaging it into whatever was moving him at the moment. Like, he just has so much knowledge that he was putting into those songs. No one could ever basically there is no other person that's gonna come along and be like, yeah, I'm the new Quincy Jones that was born in like 1980. Like, it's impossible for it to happen. Like,
you want to know the little part about that? Why that's not a thing? Why that can't be a thing? He died. He died at 91 today, right?
Yeah.
His grandfather was a slave. And when people talk about like the this was a long time ago, we have motherfuckers that were alive that were touched by people that were still in bondage.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, when people talk about like, the legacy of discrimination and Jim Crow and all that kind of stuff, and apartheid in our American apartheid, is like, my grandmother like lived in segregation. She died in 2009, but like that was the thing. Like, we have parents here that were on buses because of segregation. You know what I'm saying? Like, my stepdad had to be bussed while the busing rides were going on. Like, anyway, but yeah, back to Quincy Jones. Like, yeah, man, like, his crown jewel stuff is Michael Jackson stuff is Michael Jackson's prime. But as you mentioned, like, it is it is short changing him to only talk about that. We just don't have the scale or the time right now because like we'll be here all we could do a Quincy Jones podcast.
Yeah.
If we were to sit down, go over the stuff, go through the stuff. And there will be people that do it. And I suggest it for those that will ever come across those or whatever else. I say check it out because that's what I'm going to be doing over this next week.
Please feel free to post it in the One Nation Radio Discord channel.
Yeah. Anything y'all see with Quincy Jones, whatever else over the next over y'all time being at me in Discord.
Yeah, for sure. Recipes Quincy Jones, and he a flamboyant, charismatic,
super
just a hilarious, like a star,
and, yeah. I mean, he was still involved in music, up until recent. Like the last, what's it, Don FM? No, the album before Don FM for Weekend. He's doing the intros. No, he's actually on Don FM. So Weekend's last album, right? He's doing interlude, just talking about like how the music business was and whatever. I was saying, man, cut the bullshit. Just make the record, just make the hot records and make the companies pay for the budgeting. The shit was fucking hilarious. Like he's in his late 80s talking cash shit. Like he's great. He is great, man.
So like I spun like an hour and a half of Quincy Jones in the pre-show of this podcast.
You want another hour and a half to do more because he has another hour and a half worth of shit.
So I guess we'll move on.
Did you play anything off the Wiz album?
I was gonna play the Wiz, but I didn't click it.
Oh, you get my point.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out like he has iconic stuff like that.
But yeah, man.